Welcome to Cherry Blossom BL Story, where emotions bloom and stories unfold. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's chapter.
In the shadowed halls of Aetherion Academy, two rival heirs have spent years spilling blood over a poison that killed one father and scarred two houses forever. Elian Voss, sharp-tongued, ruthless, hiding the Omega truth that would destroy his legacy. Draven Blackthorne, dominant alpha, fiercely protective, sworn to bury every Voss alive. They hate each other, they fight like animals, they bruise and bleed and break tables in crowded corridors, until one heat cycle shatters every lie, one possessive bite changes everything. One confession under moonlight turns enemies into mates. What starts as vengeance ends in forever, a forbidden knot, a united house, and two broken boys who finally find home in each other's arms. Chapter 5, The Fever and the Secret. The fever came without warning. It struck midway through advanced diplomatic strategy, a class Elian usually dominated with razor, sharp commentary, and cool detachment. One moment he was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, dissecting a centuries-old treaty with biting precision. The next, the room tilted violently. Sweat broke across his skin in a sudden, drenching wave. His vision narrowed to pinpricks of light. The cedar steel scent he had always carried, his pride, his proof, twisted, curdled, bloomed into something softer, sweeter, dangerously floral. He tried to stand. The chair scraped back, heads turned. Then the floor rushed up to meet him. He woke in the academy infirmary, sheets damp, throat raw, the metallic tang of suppressants lingering on his tongue. A white-coated doctor, an older beta with kind but guarded eyes, stood at the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand. Two nurses hovered nearby, faces carefully blank. "Mr. Voss," the doctor said quietly, "you've presented." Elian's heart slammed against his ribs. He forced himself to sit up despite the dizziness. "Alpha," he rasped. "I presented Alpha." The doctor's gaze dropped to the chart, then back to Elian. "The blood work is conclusive. You are Omega." The fever was the final marker. It's unusually late, but not unheard of. Elian laughed once, a short, broken sound. "No, that's not possible." "It is," the doctor said gently. "Your scent has already begun to shift. We've administered emergency suppressants, but they're temporary. The change is permanent." Elian's mind raced back to Uncle Harlan's voice, cold and final, spoken years ago after a cousin's late presentation. "If any Voss heir dares present Omega, I'll see them collared and married off before the ink dries on the designation certificate." "We do not breed weakness into this line." The room spun again. Elian gripped the bed rail until his knuckles blanched. "I need you to listen carefully," he said, voice low. "No one can know. No one, not the headmaster, not my family, especially not Harlan Voss." The doctor hesitated. "Medical ethics, money," Elian cut in. "Name your price. I have access to accounts he doesn't monitor. 10,000 crowns now, another 20 when the forged report is filed. Alpha designation, full hormonal profile altered, scent markers scrubbed. You've done it before. I know you have. Late bloomers pay well to keep their secrets." The doctor's jaw tightened. He looked at the door, then back at Elian. The silence stretched. 35,000, the doctor said at last. "And you never mention my name." "Done." By evening, the official report was filed. Elian Voss, Alpha, presented at 19. The Academy accepted it without question. Late presentations were rare but documented. Harlan was summoned to the infirmary the next morning. He arrived in a swirl of black wool and triumph. "Alpha," he said, clapping Elian on the shoulder hard enough to make fresh bruises flare. "I knew you had it in you, boy. The Voss line endures." Elian forced a smile, thin and practiced. "Of course, Uncle." Harlan's eyes gleamed. "We'll announce it properly at the spring gala. You'll stand at my right hand. Alliances will fall into place like dominoes. The Blackthorns will choke on their own envy." Elian nodded, letting the praise wash over him like acid. Inside, terror coiled tight around his lungs. Every breath carried the faint, forbidden sweetness of his true scent, barely masked by the heavy alpha pheromone cologne he'd slathered on the moment the nurses left the room. It smelled like cedar sharpened with gunmetal and dominance, artificial, overpowering, perfect camouflage. He would reapply every 4 hours. He would never be without it again. They discharged him that afternoon. Harlan insisted on escorting him back to the family quarters himself, arms slung around Elian's shoulders like a conqueror parading a prize. Students whispered as they passed, some offered nods of respect, others cast envious glances. Elian kept his head high, jaw set, every step a performance. In the privacy of his room, he locked the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor. His hands shook as he pulled the small glass vial from his pocket. Emergency, grade suppressants, bitter and chemical. He swallowed 2 dry, grimacing at the burn. Then he uncapped the cologne again, dousing wrists, throat, the hollow behind his ears until the floral undertone drowned beneath layers of false alpha musk. He stared at himself in the mirror. The face looking back was still sharp, still arrogant, still unmistakably Elian Voss. But the eyes, those were different, haunted, cornered. He touched the place on his neck where a claiming bite would one day be forced if the truth ever surfaced. The thought made bile rise in his throat. Harlan knocked once, entered without waiting for permission. Dinner in an hour. Wear the black velvet, we're celebrating tonight. Yes, uncle. Harlan studied him a moment longer, something almost paternal in his gaze. You've made me proud, boy. At last, the door closed. Elian exhaled slowly, forcing the tremor from his limbs. He would play the part. He would smile at banquets, spar with alphas, court alliances, all while the secret gnawed at him like rot beneath perfect paint. He would bury the Omega deep, deeper than fear, deeper than shame, until no one could ever find it. But every time he caught his own reflection, he saw the lie staring back, and every time he scented the air, he caught the ghost of lavender beneath the steel. He was terrified. He was alone. And somewhere across campus, in the shadowed halls where Draven Blackthorne still watched him with storm, grey eyes full of hate, Elian wondered briefly, stupidly, what it would feel like if someone knew, if someone cared. He crushed the thought before it could take root. He had a role to play, and he would play it until it killed him. Chapter 6. The lie takes hold the days after the infirmary blurred into a performance Elian had never rehearsed. He moved through Aetherion's corridors like a blade wrapped in velvet, sharp edges hidden beneath the expected alpha swagger. Every morning began the same, 2 suppressants swallowed with water that tasted like metal, then the ritual of the cologne. He applied it in layers, wrists, throat, the small of his back, until the floral ghost of his true scent was buried so deep it might as well have never existed. The artificial alpha musk clung to him like armor, heavy and acrid, making his head throb by noon. In advanced diplomatic strategy, he still sat at the front, still dissected treaties with surgical precision. When Professor Merck asked for analysis of the 17th century Voss Blackthorne Accord, Elian delivered the answer in his usual drawl. Cool, cutting, flawless. Peace bought with poison is still peace, he said, leaning back. The Blackthorns learned that lesson early. Shame they never quite mastered the follow-through. The class laughed. Even Merck permitted a thin smile. Elian felt the weight of approving eyes on him, alpha eyes, and let the praise settle like ash on his tongue, but the effort cost him. By mid-afternoon, his hands trembled when no one was looking. The suppressants left him hollow, muscles aching as though he'd run for miles without stopping. He excused himself from sparring sessions with excuses of lingering fever effects, and no one questioned it. Late presentation alphas were often volatile for weeks. Everyone assumed he was simply adjusting. His clique noticed the distance but attributed it to arrogance. "You're different since the presentation," Ikashin said one evening in the common room, sprawled across a leather sofa with a tankard of ale, more untouchable. Elian arched a brow. You say that like it's a complaint. Thorn snorted. It's not, just weird. You used to join us when we went after the runt. Now you watch from the side lanes like you're above it. Elian's smile didn't reach his eyes. I have bigger targets now. Kai Blackthorne is small game. They accepted it. They always accepted his word when he delivered it with enough edge. But the targeting didn't stop. In the lower courtyards, Cashin and Thorn still found ways to corner Kai, tripping him on staircases, accidentally knocking ink across his notes, muttering Omegas, lures loud enough for nearby groups to hear and snicker. Leora was subtler, more vicious, a whispered comment in passing about how disappointing it must be for Draven to carry dead weight, delivered just as Kai walked by. Each incident left Kai smaller, quieter, more withdrawn. Draven's fury was a constant storm cloud, but he couldn't be everywhere. He shadowed his brother when he could, snarling at anyone who came too close, yet the academy was vast and the attacks were surgical, quick, deniable, designed to wear Kai down without giving Draven a clear target. Elian watched it all from a distance. He told himself it was strategy. Let the others do the dirty work. He would keep his hands clean for the bigger game. But every time he caught sight of Kai flinching at a raised voice or hurrying away with shoulders hunched, something twisted low in his gut, something that felt dangerously close to guilt. And then there was Draven. Draven noticed. It started small. In the dining hall one afternoon, Elian passed the Blackthorne table on his way to his own. He kept his stride confident, chin high, cologne thick enough to announce his presence before he even entered a room. But as he drew level, Draven's head snapped up. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, Draven's nostrils flared, his brow furrowed. Confusion, then something sharper. He leaned forward slightly, inhaling again, as though testing the air. Elian didn't break stride. He flashed a mocking half-smile and kept walking, but he felt Draven's gaze on his back the entire way to his seat. Later, in the corridor outside tactics, it happened again. Draven was waiting for Kai outside the Omega seminar room. Elian approached from the opposite direction, laughing at something Thorn said. As he passed, Draven turned, tracking him. This time Draven stepped into his path. Voss. Elian stopped, raising one brow. Blackthorne, still playing guard dog. Draven's eyes narrowed. He leaned in close enough that Elian could feel the heat of him, smell the smoke and dire dominance that rolled off him in waves. Draven inhaled slowly, deliberately. Your scent, Draven murmured almost to himself. It's different. Elian's pulse spiked. He forced a laugh, sharp and careless. Your presentation does that, makes everything stronger, jealous. Draven studied him for a long moment, grey eyes searching, probing. Then he shook his head once, as though dismissing a stray thought. Must be the cologne, he said flatly. Smells like desperation. Elian's smile tightened. Careful. Some might call that envy. Draven stepped back, but the frown lingered between his brows. He let Elian pass, the lie held, for now, but the tension coiled tighter with every passing day. Elian's mask was flawless in public, but alone in his room he peeled it off piece by piece. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, exhaustion crashing over him like a tide. The suppressants burned in his veins, his body ached for rest it couldn't have. He caught himself scenting the air, sometimes searching for the missing sharpness of alpha, finding only the faint, traitorous sweetness he hated. And in the quiet moments, when the academy slept and the wind howled against the windows, he thought of Draven's narrowed eyes, of the way he had leaned in, of the way he had almost seen. Elian pressed his palms to his face and breathed through his fingers. The lie was taking hold, but it was also beginning to crack. And somewhere in the shadowed corridors of Aetherion, Draven Blackthorne was starting to wonder why the Voss air suddenly smelled like fear beneath all that borrowed steel. Chapter 7. Locker room. Ambush. The locker room beneath the training arena smelled of sweat, rubber mats and old brass. Steam drifted from the showers, curling around rows of dented metal lockers painted academy grey. Gym class had ended 20 minutes earlier. Most students had already left for dinner or study hall. The space echoed with dripping faucets and the occasional clang of a closing door. Kai Blackthorne lingered because he always did, waiting until the crowd thinned so he could change without eyes on him. He stood in front of his locker, towel around his waist, pulling on his shirt when the door at the far end banged open. Elian Voss stepped in first, still in his gym shorts and sleeveless black training shirt, hair damp and pushed back from his forehead. Behind him came Cashin, Thorn, and two others from the outer edges of their circle, big, quiet alphas who followed orders without question. The air shifted instantly, heavy with intent. Kai froze, fingers tightening on the hem of his half-buttoned shirt. Blackthorne, Elian said, voice light but edged, "You're slow today. Thought you'd be gone by now." Kai didn't answer. He reached for his cloak, movements careful, measured. Cashin moved first, fast, casual, like he was reaching for something else. He grabbed Kai's wrist, twisted it behind his back, and shoved him face first against the lockers. Metal rang. Kai gasped, the sound muffled against cold steel. Thorn laughed low. Look at him, already shaking. Elian stepped closer, slow, deliberate. He hooked two fingers under the collar of Kai's shirt and yanked it open, buttons popping and skittering across the tiles. The shirt hung loose, exposing pale skin still flushed from exertion. Kai tried to twist away. Cashin tightened his grip until Kai whimpered. "Strip him," Elian ordered quietly. The others closed in. Hands tore at the towel. It fell away. Thorn ripped the shirt the rest of the way off, leaving Kai in nothing but damp briefs. He curled in on himself, arms pinned, breath coming in short, panicked bursts. His scent spiked rain. Soaked lavender turned sharp with terror. Elian tilted his head, studying him like a specimen. "See, nothing special, just skin and fear. Your brother's been wasting his time protecting this." Kai's voice cracked. "Let me go." "No," Elian said simply. Cashin shoved him harder against the lockers. The edge of a handle dug into Kai's cheek. A thin line of blood welled up. That was when the outer door exploded inward. Draven didn't knock. He didn't shout. He simply appeared, shoulders filling the doorway, eyes already black with rage. His gym bag hit the floor with a thud. The scent that rolled off him was apocalyptic. Smoke and iron turned molten fury, thick enough to choke. He saw Kai half naked, pinned, bleeding, and something inside him snapped clean in two. He moved like violence given form. The first alpha, unnamed, one of the quiet ones, never got his hands up. Draven's fist crashed into his temple. He dropped without a sound. Cashin released Kai and spun, snarling. Draven caught him by the throat, lifted, slammed him into a row of lockers so hard the doors buckled inward. Cashin slid down, gasping, blood streaming from his nose. Thorn lunged with a knife pulled from somewhere. Draven sidestepped, grabbed the wrist, twisted until bone cracked. Thorn screamed. Draven drove a knee into his gut, folding him in half, then finished with an elbow to the back of the skull. Thorn crumpled. The second quiet alpha backed away, hands raised. Draven didn't let him finish. A single punch sent him sprawling across the wet tiles. Elian hadn't moved. He stood in the center of the carnage, breathing steady, eyes locked on Draven. The cologne still clung to him, sharp cedar and steel, but beneath it, something flickered, faint and floral and wrong. Draven turned to him last. "You," he said, the word a low growl. Elian lifted his chin, protective as ever. Draven crossed the distance in 2 strides. His hand closed around Elian's throat, not a grab, a vise, and lifted him off the floor. Elian's back slammed into a locker, metal dented behind him. Draven pressed in close, forearm pinning Elian's chest, fingers tightening just enough to make breathing a privilege. "You touched him," Draven said, voice deadly soft. "You stripped him. You humiliated him. Again." Elian's lips peeled back in a bloody smile, even as his vision spotted. "He's Omega, weak. You can't protect him from reality forever." Draven's grip tightened. Elian's feet dangled, his toes scraped tile. I will rip your throat out with my teeth if you ever come near him again. Do you understand me, Voss?" Elian's eyes glittered, defiant even as air ran thin. "Try it." Draven leaned in until their foreheads nearly touched. "One word from him, one single word, and I end you, right here, no witnesses, no consequences, just blood on the floor and your body in the sea." For a heartbeat, the locker room was silent except for the drip of showers and the ragged breathing of the fallen. Then Kai's voice, small, trembling, cut through. "Draven, please." Draven's head snapped toward his brother. Kai had slid to the floor, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around himself. He was shaking, tears tracking through the blood on his cheek, but his eyes were fixed on Draven, pleading. Draven's hand loosened, slowly, reluctantly. He released Elian, letting him drop to his knees in a coughing heap. Draven crossed to Kai in 3 strides, knelt, pulled him into his arms without a word. Kai buried his face in Draven's chest, fingers clutching the back of his shirt. Draven's hand cupped the nape of his neck, gentle, shielding, protective. He didn't look at Elian again. He simply rose, lifting Kai with him, and walked out. The door swung shut behind them. Elian stayed on his knees a long moment, throat raw, pulse hammering. Around him, his friends groaned and stirred, broken and dazed. He touched the marks on his neck, 5 perfect fingerprints already darkening purple. Hatred burned hotter than ever. A white, hot coal lodged beneath his ribs, but beneath it, deeper, quieter, something else twisted. The way Draven had looked at Kai, the way he'd stopped for no reason but a whisper, the way Elian's own body had reacted, not with fear, not entirely, but with something raw and unwanted and alive. He shoved to his feet, ignoring the ache in his throat, the tremor in his hands. He straightened his torn shirt. He walked out past the wreckage of his own making, and the hatred between Elian Voss and Draven Blackthorne sharpened into something lethal, something personal, something that would not end until one of them broke, or both. Chapter 8. A moment of unspoken tension. The hallway fight had ended the way they all did. Security dragging them apart, blood on the marble, teachers shouting useless warnings into the void. This time the damage was worse. Elian's lip split open, Draven's cheek raked raw by Elian's nails, both uniforms torn at the seams, buttons scattered like spent shells. They'd been shoved toward the gymnasium wing for a cooling off before the headmaster decided punishments. Neither had resisted. They ended up in the narrow storage room behind the bleachers. One of the guards had barked at them to wait inside while he fetched ice packs. The heavy steel door had swung shut with a metallic thud. The lock clicked automatically. Old mechanism, faulty latch. No one came back for 10 minutes. Then 20. Neither moved to bang on the door. The room was small, barely wider than Draven's shoulders. Stacks of blue gym mats leaned against one wall. Folded bleacher sections took up most of the space behind them. A single high window let in a thin stripe of gray afternoon light, enough to see the dust dancing in the air and the fresh blood on their skin. They stood facing each other in the center of the cramped gap between the mats and the wall, chests still heaving, breathing loud in the confined silence. Sweat and blood and the sharp bite of old rubber filled the space, but underneath it all pheromones. Draven's dark amber smoke, thick and dominant, pressing outward like a physical weight. Elian's cologne had worn thin during the fight. The sweet, defiant edge of his true Omega scent leaked through in fragile threads, curling into the air between them like smoke from a hidden fire. Draven took the first step, one boot forward, then another. Elian didn't retreat. His back was already inches from the padded bleacher stack. Nowhere to go. Draven kept coming until their bodies met chest to chest, hips aligned, thighs brushing. Elian's slimmer frame slotted against Draven's broader one like pieces made for each other. No space left, no air that wasn't shared. Draven braced one thick forearm on the wall beside Elian's head, caging him without quite trapping. His other hand rose slowly, deliberately, and curled around the side of Elian's neck. Thumb settled over the frantic pulse there, fingers slid up into dark hair at the nape, cradling, controlling. Elian's hands lifted on instinct, fisting the torn front of Draven's shirt just above the waistband. Knuckles grazed bare, hot skin where the fabric had ridden up. Neither pulled away, they stayed locked like that, bodies pressed flush from collarbone to knee. Draven's thigh slipped naturally between Elian's. Elian's legs shifted just enough to bracket it, muscles tensing, releasing, tensing again in tiny involuntary pulses. Heat bled through ripped uniforms, skin to skin where tears exposed flesh, fabric clinging damply everywhere else. Heartbeats hammered against each other, out of sync at first, then slowly, inexorably aligning. Draven lowered his forehead until it rested against Elian's, noses brushed, once, twice, lips hovered a single breath apart. Every inhale pulled the other's scent deeper into lungs already burning. Every exhale ghosted warm across parted mouths. Draven's free hand drifted lower, settled at Elian's hip, fingers dug in, not bruising, just anchoring. Thumb tracing slow, mindless circles over the sharp jut of bone beneath torn trousers. Elian's breathing fractured, short, uneven hitches. His silver eyes were half-lidded, pupils blown wide, locked on Draven's dark gaze like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. Draven's thumb on Elian's neck slid upward, traced the elegant line of his jaw, down again, brushed feather, light across the fresh split on his lower lip. Elian's mouth parted on a silent gasp, the copper taste of blood mingled with the faint salt of Draven's skin. Then Draven closed the last fraction of distance. The kiss was not gentle, it was teeth and hunger, and everything they had never said aloud. Draven's mouth crashed against Elian's hard, claiming, tasting of blood and salt and fury. Elian met him with equal force, biting back, tongue sweeping in to tangle with Draven's in a messy, desperate slide. A low growl rumbled from Draven's chest. Elian answered with a sharp, needy sound he couldn't swallow. Draven's hand in Elian's hair tightened, tilting his head to deepen the angle. Elian's nails raked down Draven's sides, dragging fresh red lines through skin, pulling him impossibly closer. Their hips rocked together, once instinctive, involuntary friction sparking heat that made Elian's knees buckle. Draven caught him, thigh pressing firmer between Elian's legs, holding him upright against the bleachers. They kissed like they fought, savage, unrelenting, no quarter given. Lips bruised, tongues clashed, teeth caught on torn skin. Every scrape, every pull, every shared breath felt like punishment and promise at once. Draven's scent surged, possessive, molten, wrapping around Elian until he was drowning in it. Elian's own pheromones answered in helpless waves, sweet lavender blooming wild and unrestrained, flooding the tiny room. Minutes blurred, 5, 6, 7. Neither broke away first. The distant gym bell rang harsh, jarring, slicing through the haze. Draven made a rough sound against Elian's mouth, half growl, half regret, and forced himself to pull back, not far, just enough that their lips parted with a wet, obscene sound. Foreheads stayed pressed together. Breaths came in harsh pants, mingling hot and ragged between them. Draven's thumb lingered on Elian's swollen lower lip, smearing a fresh bead of blood. Elian's eyes fluttered open, silver met storm, grey, raw, unguarded, stripped of every lie and pretense for one suspended heartbeat. Then Draven stepped back, only half a step, enough to break full body contact. Their foreheads stayed touching for one last second, noses still brushing, breaths still mingling. Draven turned, shoulders rigid, fists clenched at his sides. He crossed the small space in 2 strides and yanked the door open. The lock had never really caught. It gave with a metallic scrape. He stepped into the hallway without looking back. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click. Elian remained where he was, pinned against the bleachers by nothing but memory, chest rising and falling in harsh pants, lips tingling, swollen, tasting of copper and smoke and something darker. Skin flushed and oversensitive everywhere Draven had touched, neck, hip, the inside of his thigh where muscles still ached from the press of Draven's leg. Slowly, his legs gave out. He slid down the padded stack until he sat on the floor, knees drawn up, head tipped back against the bleachers. Eyes closed, breathing ragged, he could still feel at every point of contact, every bruising press of mouth, every shared heartbeat, the way Draven had growled into the kiss like he was claiming territory he'd always known was his. The line between hatred and want had never been thinner. It was gone, and Elian didn't know whether to rage or surrender. He stayed there until the light from the high window faded to dusk, still tasting Draven on his lips, still feeling the ghost of solid muscle and heat, and that low, possessive rumble echoing through every inch of him. When he finally stood, legs unsteady, he straightened his torn blazer with shaking hands. He walked out into the empty hallway alone, but he carried the weight of that kiss with him, inescapable, burning, forever changed.
That's all for today on Cherry Blossom BL story. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this chapter? Did you like it, or do you think something unexpected is coming? Comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories.